welcome to Woman Wednesdays. I'm Teresa Lauterbach, owner of Afternoon Social, and we have a special guest again from, if you go back to Monday's video, you'll see how she achieved her milestones. This is Pam Sams. She is a financial advisor, and today she's going to go over some advice about how to get financially unstuck and show us and how to become secure in our financial futures. So welcome again, Pam, and glad to see you again here on Wednesday. So
yes,
it's over to you.
Yeah, exactly. Thanks for having me once again, Teresa. Really, financially stuck. I know a lot of women out there may be feeling that, especially after a year that we had last year with COVID, is how am I going to ever get ahead with my money? And I just feel stuck. And a lot of what I go over with my clients really is rooted in what I call money stories and money scripts. And what that means is really how you grew up with money and how you view money and what your relationship is with money. And I always have this conversation is that how did you grow up with money? How was money handled in your household? And it really depends how you grew up with money is how you make your financial decisions today. Most of what you learn about your money starts at age 6, believe it or not. So if you think about it, your 6-year-old may still be running your financial household today, which is fairly scary if you know 6-year-olds. Right. But it comes down to, especially, if you came from a household where money was taboo topic, nobody ever really talked about it. You kind of seen maybe it was a form of contention between your parents that every time money was brought up that there was an argument, or if you were asked if you wanted something and you were told no, you can't have that, we don't have the money right now, or you got a lot of it and you never wanted for anything. So a lot of what you experienced as a child is exactly how you make your financial decisions and your relationship with money. Or if it causes you a lot of financial anxiety. I have a lot of clients that go through what I call financial anxiety with if money is even brought up, they just don't want to deal with it. And that is what keeps them stuck, because they really just don't want to own up to it, unfortunately, because it just gives them so much angst as well. So I have a behavioral financial advisor designation background. And before I had these kind of tough conversations or hard questions prior to getting the designation, but a few years ago I got that. And what it is really marrying neuroscience with financial planning. It's understanding how we make decisions with our money. Do we have certain biases when it comes to investing? Do we have certain biases as it relates to our money? And then really what your values and your core values are. So I started with the values conversation with my clients, really understanding what their values are, what's important to them, and then really matching that with any financial goals that they have, and then really making sure it's aligned with their behavior. Because if you tell me one thing, but you're behaving another way, then that's going to get you stuck and behind the curve. So if you say, I want to retire early, but you're out here, you're spending and you're not saving, you're spending everything that you have, there's no way that you can retire early with that behavior. So I have to kind of play a little bit of principle or, whatever, slap people in the wrist a lot, right, to understand that your values and your goals are not in alignment with your behavior. So I call it a VBB model, values, goals, behavior. And really have to call people out on the carpet if they're not behaving appropriately with their money. So that's what really keeps people stuck, particularly women, because sometimes we tend to feel a lot more with our finances. I always ask people as well, is that where do you feel money in your body? Because a lot of times that financial anxiety leads to maybe stomach aches or headaches or whatever the case may be. And having that type of anxiety really is not good for you physically, mentally. And so coming clean, or at least kind of what I call a clearing or cleansing out of some of that, really helps women get to a proper footing where they can really talk about it, voice their concerns, and having the behavioral financial background, really understand where they're coming from. So I can really help them through that, but then also put together a really sound financial plan for them. So becoming financially unstuck starts with kind of clearing out a lot of what I call the baggage money scripts, what we've been told about ourselves with money. I'm not good with money, or I'm never going to be able to retire, or whatever thing that you're telling yourself that keeps you stuck in a certain spot without making movement. So I have to understand where your money story is, number one, which is how you grew up with money. Number two, those money scripts on what you're telling yourself about your finances, and then understanding that in order to move you forward to get you unstuck from that. And once you become unstuck, it's really developing what I call building a financial foundation. So that's the basics on making sure, in the previous segment that we talked about, is making sure you know where your money goes, where it goes on a monthly basis, what income and what your outflows are, your cash management. And then from there, looking at what type of credit card debt or personal debt that you may have, because that also affects your financial foundation. And so I work kind of on a 4-quadrant segment for financial wellness. One is cash management or cash reserves. The second quadrant being more of your risk management, which is your insurances, the life insurance, disability, health insurance, all of that. Third quadrant really covers your investment strategy and how you're investing yourself. And then the fourth quadrant deals with legacy planning, which is estate planning. Do you have a will in place? Do you have a trust if that's necessary? So really working on all of those quadrants to make sure that builds that solid financial foundation for yourself. So once you get yourself unstuck, we build that financial foundation on those 4 quadrants and really look at it, and then what type of things we need to do in each of those in order to move you forward to make sure you're financially sound.
Fantastic. So when you get financially sound, then you help them maintain their financial situation?
Yeah, exactly. So it's always ongoing advice and maintenance, because with anything, I act as an advisor, but also a coach for encouragement to keep you going and motivated. But then also just to track to see how things are moving along. Are you making all of the milestones or the markers you need to, based on your financial goals? And then if you experience setbacks, which some people do, how do we get back on track? If you had a little bit of a setback for that. But being there as that kind of ongoing guide and trusted advisor throughout the journey, that's what I do after we set that solid foundation, financial foundation for you.
Okay. So this is probably a dirty word for a lot of women. The first place to start is a budget, right?
Yes, I always call it the dreaded B word, but not that one, but the other dreaded B word.
Right. So because a lot of people do not want to try to even think about a budget.
No, unfortunately. And so I substitute that word sometimes to call it more of a roadmap or financial roadmap, because it's the same thing, because you're really just figuring out what resources did you have, where are you spending, if there are other things I can, before I mentioned, reduce or eliminate out of your financial roadmap to put yourself on a better footing. So I try to substitute, make the words a little softer. So we're not using the bad B word, but not that one that I mentioned before. So yeah, and I think it also gets a bad rap, because most of the time when people think of the dreaded B word or budget, is that they think it's more about being deprived of something. And it's not really that at all. Mm-hmm. It's really understanding how you operate with money, what are you spending it on? Because there can be things in your budget or your financial roadmap that you want in there. So for example, I talked about the needs and the wants. If there's some things on the wants column that it keeps you motivated, keeps you going, we keep that there. But is there something else that we can reduce or eliminate in order to kind of keep you in the same situation, so you're not overspending on things? So it's not really depriving you, it's really just making choices, giving you a little bit of options, or prioritizing a little better, knowing how your finances work from a cash flow management standpoint. So don't think of being deprived, just really thinking about how you can really fit everything in, and then really just having choices or options that are available and prioritizing where your money needs to go.
Right. And you realize you actually have more access to money once you manage it correctly. Doesn't seem like it goes out so fast.
Exactly. And if you have it, earmarked for certain things, like you said, it doesn't go out as quickly or as fast with that. So that's where you come from. Is that it doesn't go out as quickly if you can identify where it's labeled and where it's going. And then, like I said, ultimately, hope you have a surplus where now you have a little bit left over. Maybe perhaps you put that into a little bit of a cash reserve or emergency fund type account. So you won't be relying on your debt your credit card that would create debt. That's what happens a lot of times with people overspend and not knowing where things are going. They tend to overspend, putting them in a deficit, which puts them in a place where they have to rely on credit cards in order to meet some of the obligations. But if it's just tightening the budget a little bit, then there may be some ways that you could come out a little bit ahead instead of falling behind.
Right. So and now by managing that, they can see where maybe go out and look for cheaper health insurance or cheaper insurance plans. If you're saying, oh, well, I'm spending a lot of money on this, why should is there something less expensive to do?
Exactly. And that's the thing, identifying those. And so I go through an exercise, even for myself, at the end of each year or at the beginning of the year, where everybody's doing their financial or their New Year's resolutions, is to what happened the year before. I have a really good software program called mint.com, which is really a good cash management tool for you, and it'll show you a nice little pretty pie charts where all of your money went the previous year at the end of each year. So you can start the beginning of January and say, okay, what happened? And you're like, oh my God, you look at that and say, where did all this money go? And it'll give you all of the itemized items on what did you spend money on. And so what I found out for myself, even beginning of this year, is that I had a lot of those subscription services that you sign up for. You do the trial for 14 days and then you forget to cancel it, but it's only like $5.99 or $6.99. You're like, I'm not gonna miss that. That's what happens over time. You sign up for a lot of these things. So I was actually able to free up $150 of cash flow just by this nonsense music subscriptions I didn't use, maybe some publications that I read a couple of times but then forgot about it. That's what happens, is we have a lot of fluff that we pay for, and because it's just incremental, we don't notice as much. So I sometimes use what I call a cash diet for people. If you can use a cash only, you can understand a little bit better how you function and operate with money versus using plastic, because we use it differently mentally. Right. Is that if I can pull out my debit card or my credit card versus if you actually had a $20 bill and you're like, I don't know, do I really want to part with this? It's mentally different. And so I try to say, try for like a week. You take out X amount of dollars out of the ATM, and that's what you live off of. And you have to track it, of course, a little differently and say, okay, I got $200 out. I went to 7-Eleven. I went here, blah, blah, blah. How much money did you spend? And then you can see how differently you spend actual cash versus if you pulled out the debit card all the time. But the areas that I see that are notorious for overspending is dining out, because it's convenient. So we go to, the Starbucks and, the Dunkins, and we go to all the different places, but it just adds up over time. So I see dining out as one of the big expenses that a lot of people overspend on. And of course, things that we put in place that we never revisit. So if your cable bill or your cell phone bill, there's so many what I call data wars out there with certain carriers that if you go and you call and say, do you have anything different this month, or, what's the latest, they'll let you know, and they'll say, oh yeah, we got this other thing. You can get this amount of data for this, and we can lower your bill. But a lot of times people just don't take the time to go do so. So those are the areas that you can say, I was paying X amount of dollars all this time, never really thought about it. So I did the same thing with my cell phone bill. I have kind of the family plan that everybody has a phone, but I went back to them, I think for something else. But then they said, hey, did you know about the latest, whatever we have? And I was like, oh, they said, well, can we do kind of an audit on what you're paying? And so I was able to free up $50 there from just cell phone bill. Same thing with my auto insurance. A lot of times people feel that, auto insurance is going to do what it's going to do, and I just pay it. But what happens over time, and I have a few friends that are actually sell auto insurance, is that if your car is a certain age, you don't need the mechanical breakdown anymore, because it's not going to be much more to repair it or pay for it with an older car. So on that, you're paying for extra coverage that you really don't necessarily need at that particular point in time. So I did the same thing with my auto insurance, and then I was able to save $70 that way. So there's a lot of areas that we just think we have to kind of pay as because that's what it is. But if you go back and say, or do you have something different, they'll do an audit for you on your auto insurance, your cable or your cell phone bill. And then also, maybe your life insurance. There's so many different policies that are available now that may be more cost efficient for you. And especially if you're closer to your term, maybe you can get into a different policy that will be able to save you a little bit more money as well, or at least give you more features. Because I also do life insurance as well. Is that sometimes is that I always explain it to people. It's like, okay, what version of your iPhone or your Android do you have? They usually have the latest version. It's like, what is the latest version of your life insurance that you have? Nobody really upgrades that or know that that's a possibility. So 20 years ago or 10 years ago, when you got your life policy, things have changed. There may be policies with better features or better benefits that you could either save money on, or get a policy that will cost just as much, just the same, but give you better benefits. So it's always best to reevaluate those as well.
Fantastic. Well, it sounds like all great advice, and I think we're getting time for wrapping up our call today. Yep. And thank you for joining us. And if you want to contact her, so it sounds like she's going to be a fantastic help as an advisor. I'll have all of her information on this post where you can contact Pam. And thank you again for joining us on the Afternoon Social. And maybe we'll hear from you again in the future. We'll have her on again later on. Yes. So
that would be great. Thank you, Teresa. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.